I remember my landlord, she ended up coming into my place and she ended up saying to me, well, I've heard like a lot of noise complaints. So I just want to know like, what's all that noise about? And when I told her that like, you know, once in a while I have like people over and stuff, she ended up walking into my bedroom out of nowhere. And let's just say what she wanted was only something a crazy landlord would want. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome back to another insane, but I gotta say crazy story. So today's story all starts back, I want to say like 3 years ago. Now, 3 years ago is when I moved out of my parents' house and I decided to focus on my content and basically just full-time make videos and have my own space to do it. I always found it super awkward to record at home when my parents were like literally right above me, hearing every single thing I say about all the stuff I did back then. Even at some points coming downstairs and yelling at me about how the story is way too much and how I shouldn't put it on the internet. But at the same time, like, come on guys, like I gotta tell everything to you guys. You guys are like my family. But going on with the story, I remember there was one moment in my life where I actually decided to finally move out. And when I did, I remember it was one of the most greatest things ever. Because I remember when I got my own place, I ended up putting my gaming setup in the living room. I had whatever snacks I wanted. And honestly, I had more rooms than I actually needed. But honestly, just having your own space was one of the most awesomest things ever. Until, well, I guess things got a little exciting. Because I remember when I got my own place, I ended up posting online about it and showing it off. And actually, I always do it till this day. And I remember back then, having my own place was one of the most insane things to a lot of people that I went to high school with. Because they all ended up reaching out to me saying, yo, Bubba, like, you have your own place? Like, no way. Like, wait, Bubba, you live there? Like, is that actually all yours? And honestly, it was a major flex to say yes. Because I think, like, at this time, I was only, like, what, 19, turning 20? And having your own place at that age is very not common, especially knowing how much school debt is nowadays. So I remember I was, like, super excited. And a lot of people were DMing me. And honestly, it got to the point where literally the first, like, 2 weeks of, like, me having that place, a lot of people, and I mean a lot of girls especially, would always end up coming over. And I think you guys know, because I've told many stories about all the chicks I've done, but basically all these girls that would come over, let's just say most of the time they ended up staying the night and we did the Devil's Tango. Now, here's the part about apartments that really suck, because they're not soundproof, okay? The walls aren't soundproof, nor are they super concealing. So anytime I would do the Devil's Tango, let's just say my neighbors would end up hearing like a really loud like clap sound. I'm not gonna say what it was, but let's just say if you're old enough, you'll understand. And basically, I remember it got to the point where my landlord ended up messaging me on my phone saying, hey, so you've been getting a lot of noise complaints recently in the building. Is there a reason for that? And I kept telling them no, like, no, nothing's going on. No, nothing's happening, because I didn't want to like get in trouble. But then out of nowhere, one of the days later on, I ended up getting a knock on the door. And I got this knock on the door as I was in the middle of filming. So I ended up pausing my recording. I ended up standing up and going to the door and seeing who it was. And when I opened it, I saw it was like a really hot, like super attractive lady. And I didn't really know who she exactly was. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, how do you not know what your landlord looks like? Well, you gotta understand, I ended up getting the place through a realtor, which is like the person that like is connected to the landlord. I don't know if that really makes sense to y'all, but it makes somewhat sense to me. But going on with the story, I remember I ended up seeing this woman and she ended up walking in saying, oh, like, hi, you must be Bubba, right? Yeah, who are you? Oh, I'm your landlord. At that moment, I ended up wiping off the grin on my face and having like a serious face, because I could not be like, you know, looking dumb in front of this woman, because I basically live under her roof, technically speaking. So I remember she ended up walking into the place. She ended up like, you know, talking about herself a bit and how like she got into like, you know, owning property and, you know, just basically a bunch of yapping about adult stuff that I really did not care about back then, because I was 19. Like, I could care less. And then that's when she looked at me and said, wait, so do you live here all by yourself? Yeah, that's what it says on the paperwork. Interesting. So like, what do you do? What do I do? Yeah, because, well, it's not really common for people your age to like, you know, be moving out. So I'm just curious, like, what got you to this point? At that moment, me and her, we ended up sitting on my couch that I had in the apartment. And I basically kind of like told her like basically how I ended up like, you know, growing on the internet thanks to you guys, and how basically like, you know, I make videos for a living. I remember she looks at me questioning what in the world I was talking about, until she looked over at my gaming setup and saw the YouTube awards that I had on the wall. And that's when she was in massive shock, because she looked at me and said, wait, so you're like a full-on like internet celebrity living under my roof? Well, kinda, yeah, I guess, is what I told her. And then that's when she had more questions to ask, and she sat down talking to me and stuff. And then that's when she finally ended up bringing up the noise complaints. When she brought up the noise complaints, I ended up telling her how like I get super loud when I record and stream online, and you know, it probably ends up annoying the neighbors, and how I'll try to keep it down. She ended up being thankful. And then actually, funny enough, right before she left, she told me, oh, so like I was wondering, can I like come over again? Like maybe we can like talk more, because I'm actually like more curious about this internet stuff. Yeah, sure. Just come over whenever is what I told her. And that's when she ended up leaving my apartment. Now, I'm not gonna lie. She was a super hot landlord, but there was no way in hell I was going to do anything with this woman because I don't want to get in trouble and ruin the relationship I have with her to the point where she could basically kick me out. So I remember from there, I decided to basically like keep things low key and not message her nothing. But I'm not gonna lie to you, this landlord, right after she left, she ended up messaging me back to back to back, not as my landlord, but as like a friend, which was kind of mind blowing. But she kept asking me more questions. She ended up asking me about my life more. And honestly, she was super interested in me to the point where I remember I ended up having to ghost her. Yeah, I ended up ghosting my own landlord. Like I still paid her obviously every month for the place, but I ended up ghosting her and not talking to her until I want to say 1 month later. I remember she ended up basically one day randomly appearing, knocking on the door of my apartment. I ended up opening it, and when I saw it was her, I ended up saying, "Oh, hey, like it's been so long. How you been?" And that's when she ended up storming into my apartment and she said, "Baba, like I don't understand, like being like an adult is so hard, and like honestly, like I don't understand how you have it so easy in life where you just get to do whatever you want." And like honestly, like I don't know, I'm gonna be honest here, she was just yapping and complaining a bunch. I didn't really know what about, but she was just basically having a midlife crisis where, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of scared me because she seemed crazy. But going on with the story, I remember I ended up telling her to sit down on the couch. I ended up getting her a glass of water, and I told her to just run it down like what was going on. And she ended up telling me how like basically like how hard it is to own property because someone always complains and stuff, and basically all this like weird garbage that I really just did not care about. But then I think this is the part of the story where things got really insane, because I remember after she finished complaining, she got closer and closer to me to the point where, I'm not gonna lie, she looked like she was about to kiss me. So that's when I ended up standing up from the couch, because once again, I didn't want to do anything with my landlord. And I ended up basically walking around her, and I told her how, like, you know, maybe like take a break for a minute, go on vacation, just do anything so that you don't have to be near me, because dealing with her was the last thing I wanted to do. From there, I remember she ended up standing up and going to the bathroom, and after she went to the bathroom, she came out and said, "Baba, this maybe seems personal, but are you single?" Yeah, I live here by myself and I'm single." "Okay, that's good, because honestly, like, I need you to follow me. There's something I need to tell you." Sure. At this point, I thought she was gonna tell me something about like the roofing or like the plumbing in like a certain room. But then when she took me into my bedroom, she ended up basically pushing me onto the bed. And well, one thing led to another. I'm not gonna lie to you. Me and her, we ended up doing the devil's tango. Now, I'm not gonna lie. She was super hot, so I wasn't complaining. But honestly, I gotta say, this was one of my biggest mistakes, because I remember right after we finished, she ended up laying beside me saying, "Honestly, like, I'm not gonna lie. This apartment gives me a lot of memories, and I think I might move back in." Wait, what? I live here though. "Yeah, you can still live here if you want." At that moment, I ended up basically putting in my notice for wanting to leave. Luckily, I didn't sign like a full-on like year contract or anything. And yeah, I ended up moving out and moving to a different apartment in the same building, funny enough. But I moved into a different apartment, and I ended up basically living in the same building as my old landlord. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, she became a sneaky link. But hey, would you guys do it with your landlord? Because if you guys wouldn't, then just fall for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.